So if you're watching this video, you probably want to find out how to fix your Remington 870 pump action shotgun from jamming. After a shot, you don't need to push this, but you should be able to pull the shell out. But sometimes it'll get stuck and you'll have to reef on it a bit, you'll have to jiggle it around, or you'll take the butt stock and just hang on to the grip here and just smash the butt into the ground. And that'll loosen it up. And I'm going to tell you why that occurs and how you can fix it. If you've got a problem with a jamming 870, just take an empty shell, squeeze it into 4 corners, throw that in there, and it should not be able to come out. If that's your problem, all you have to do is sand the other side down and then polish it off, and it should be able to open up even if you've got a pretty messed up shell. So I've narrowed the problem down to a little bump, manufacturing defect I guess you would call it, but a bump that's left there after poor machining of the breech right outside the chamber. And what that causes is after you've fired around and you've had a shell expansion, that's just the plastic part expanding out here, not the brass rim. The shell expands, catches onto the edges here, and causes the rim to push up against this little bump. That's why it doesn't happen every time. It'll occur when the shell up here gets stuck just enough for you to pull back on the extractor and for the rim to catch. That's why if you jiggle it up and forward and backwards, that rim pops out of the little bump area and then slides straight out. But if you don't want this to happen, all you've got to do is Dremel out that, or polish out that little bump. So if you take a look at my free body diagram, this is what's supposed to occur. You've got one extractor on one side of the rim, you pull on that, and the only forces that should occur are this top edge pushes in and this bottom edge pushes in this way. So there's no forces keeping it from sliding out, so it just comes straight out. If you have that bump there, that little bump pushes up against that, and the harder you pull on the extractor, the harder it forces the rim into the bump cavity, causing it to jam, because that force will cancel out your pulling force. So no matter how hard you pull, that bump's going to push back at you even harder. And if this shell expansion up here causes the shell to get stuck, it's like you're holding it at the top. When you pull on the extractor, it pivots the shell and the rim pushes up into that little cavity and the rim gets jammed up against the bump. So when you pull back on the bolt, it just won't pull it out. So get rid of that bump and it'll slide out every time. And this is the reason why dual extractor shotguns are better, like the Mossberg, because if you've got 2 extractors pulling on it, there's no way a bump in the breech can cause anything to happen like that. So if you take a look here, so if you run your fingernail along that edge going out, you should feel a tiny bump. So in this close-up shot, you can see that there's actually contours there, and that contour is what the bump is. So just keep grinding away at that contour and make sure that bump isn't there, because the extractor is on the opposite side, so it's going to cause it to bind. Now if the polishing wheel isn't enough for you, you can take a grinding wheel or a sanding wheel. Not so much a grinding wheel. Yeah, that's a little too abrasive. Take a sanding wheel and polish out that little nub. Don't try to go too far. You want to leave something there. Alright, so once you've sanded that bump out of there, take your polishing wheel and polish it up, just to make it nice and smooth. Alright, so with the sanding wheel and then the polishing wheel, I've gotten the bump out of there and smoothened it out. So now if you take your fingernail and run it along that edge and pull back on it, it doesn't catch. That's how you can see if there's any bumps and stuff. So let's put it together and test it out. Oh yeah, and after grinding off the bluing, you might want to use some new finish. I find that its anti-corrosive polymers are pretty good. You put zinc polymers in there, so it stops corrosion by using cathodic protection. It's pretty good for even the whole outside of the barrel because the bluing doesn't always stop rust, and the extra coating of zinc polymer helps it out. So just put that on there, let it dry, and then wipe it off, and that'll keep it from rusting. This is also a solvent for oxidized materials, so any oxides it can take right off. So if you have any rust on your gun, you can take this and just rub it and it'll take the rust right off. It's pretty much like soap for rust. Oh yeah, that's smooth. So take your four-sided shell that simulates the worst of the worst shell expansion. Load it in there and then slowly pull it out. Should come out no problem. So there you go. That's how you test for and solve the 870's jamming problems. Hope you enjoyed watching and hope that helps you out. Happy shooting.